calling on people
Sure.
and we'll get started.
And I'm not on two screens either, so I can't remember who's all here. So I'm just going to call everybody, even though I know some people are here. Linda's here. Carlene Anders.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Manuel.
Present.
Dell, I think I just saw you
Here.
come in.
Yep.
Senator Warnick. Rosalinda.
Here.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought I saw her. Ray Eichmeyer. Lori Bergman.
Here.
Oh, let me go back. Ruben Betancourt.
Here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I did hear you.
Here.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. And Teresa Atkinson. Peter's here. Emilio's here. Nikki Lewis is going to be late. And Ryan.
Here.
Yep. And Dylan is here. Okay. That is everybody, I believe.
All right. For some reason, I can't seem to find my board packet. First on the agenda would be approval of the minutes, I'm guessing.
The consent agenda, yes.
Consent
Mhm.
agenda. Oh, awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much. All right. Oh, before we move on to the consent agenda, do we have any declarations of any potential conflicts of interest?
Sarah, I might share. I don't know if this is appearing on everyone else's screen, but it seems like a condensed.
Yeah, it's skin. There you go.
There you go.
There we go. All right. Hearing none. We'll move on to, do we have any public comment with us today?
Did we move to approve the consent?
No, I was just about to.
That's next.
Okay.
You're getting ahead of me, John. Now that I have the agenda in front of me, you're getting ahead of me. All right. Now, does someone want to move to approve the consent agenda?
This is Manuel. I move to approve.
A
This
second.
is Helen, I second.
All right.
So who was the
It is-
second?
Emilio.
Okay.
Amelia. All right. It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Okay. Consent agenda passes. All right. We'll keep moving along. Manuel.
Yes. So in your packet, you should have a document outlining a new board member and a request from the governance committee with a motion to approve the acceptance of Megan Francis as the tribal representative seat for our board. I don't think the document does her justice, but I had a fantastic time meeting with her. Found that she to be an amazing candidate and will serve not only the tribe, but Thrive board as well. So happy to bring this forward for approval. Any questions or comments? I don't see her online, so I don't.
She did enter.
Megan was here. She's actually at a doctor's appointment with her son Nico. She shot me a text, so
Okay.
she must have had to jump off.
Well,
And
this
they
is
all.
Helen, the
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Dylan.
I think that might have been background for Dylan.
Oh, okay. Megan, they also had some reorganization with their meetings at the tribe today regarding some of the federal government administrative decisions. So Megan may not be able to join us at all given what's happening there at the tribe. But with that said, does somebody want to make a motion and second for Megan Francis to fulfill that tribal seat?
This is Carlene. I'd like to move to have Megan fill that seat.
This is Ruben. I second.
All right, the motion has been moved and seconded by Carlene and Ruben. All those in favor say aye.
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 Right, opposed?
All right. So just a note and make sure we capture in the minutes, this is one of the few seats that have been identified as being filled or appointed by the tribe. And so there was some initial discussion on whether or not we actually needed to review her nomination and approve. But we felt it was prudent just to have her go through the process just to make sure we did our due diligence. But like I said, there were no concerns on our side. And I think that, moving forward, if this seat vacates again, I think we'll follow the same process. So thanks for the vote, and you guys will really enjoy, if you haven't met her already, you'll really enjoy meeting her and her participation on the board.
I may just also add, for those of you who attended the Driving Together Summit last October, Megan was able to provide a presentation for the Confederated Tribes of Colville Reservation at the start of the summit. So you might have had an opportunity to hear her speak. I also just want to give her a huge thank you, even though she's not on, for participating and being part of the summit as well. It was really a value add to the discussion. So really appreciated her as being part of it. Also, while I noticed, I see Lori joined as well, so just wanted to recognize that. I don't know if she was part of roll call or not.
Yeah, excited to have Megan join us. She is amazing. She just was awarded the 40 under 40 by her National Association of Tribal Leaders. So she'll be heading off to Vegas in March to accept that award. And yeah, we're excited to have her as part of our group. And I'm blessed to partner with her in a lot of other areas as well, in our education realm. So, okay. Moving right along. Legislative update.
And I see Blake has been able to join us. He was huffing his way over from, I think, the Capitol campus to get on the call with us. So I'll turn it over to Blake, and then Blake, anything else, I'd be happy to fill in.
All right. Yes, thank you. I was. It's been snowing in Olympia the last couple of days, so I have not made it back home, but I'm looking forward to going back next week. And yeah, so thanks everybody again. I'm Blake Baldwin. I am the contract government affairs consultant lobbyist with Thriving Together NCW. And in your packets, you'll see a document that I've presented and we've talked about extensively over the last several months, which is the organization's guiding policy principles. Very brief recap for anyone that might just be seeing this for the first time. That was determined by a legislative steering committee that was made up of representatives from the different coalitions for health improvement across the Thriving Together region, as well as some key board members that served on that committee. And we went through kind of a pretty rigorous process, just reaching out to stakeholders and coming up with and collaborating with the full board here to determine what the top policy priority and issue areas that this organization should be advocating for that are aligned with the 7 vital conditions for health and well-being. And so we're really excited. Actually, tomorrow there will be a charter bus and then some folks traveling separately coming over for a hill climb. So this is going to be 2 days. So on Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday morning. And we're going to have, what is it now, John and Teresa, about 23 or 24 participants from all over North Central Washington, from various partner nonprofits and Thriving Together itself, that will be visiting legislators and the state agency. We have a meeting with the Secretary of State as well to learn about his role in state government. And it's mostly going to serve as an legislative education trip for those that are attending, and then also an opportunity to advocate these policy principles to our legislators so they can keep these principles and the messaging of this organization in mind when they are casting votes in committee or on the floor of their respective chambers in the House or in the Senate. And doing so is going to be kind of the update here. Decisions are challenging around here this legislative session. I've mentioned this before, and unfortunately, we weren't able to just find $12 billion since the last time I talked to you. And so this state is facing a $10 to $12 billion budget deficit between the operating budget, transportation, and then the capital budget, which is backed by bonds with the operating budget dollars. And so there's potentially even higher over the next couple of years. We will see, but there are some significant decisions that need to be made. Governor Ferguson has prioritized in his executive or in his inaugural address, and also through executive orders, asking state agencies to go through and make budget cuts on different programs or suggest areas where they could be saving dollars, while at the same time, a lot of legislative leaders and budget writers are considering ways to either raise new revenues, or in the case of the transportation budget, potentially raise or shift transportation related revenues from the operating budget to the transportation budget. And so I can talk about that a little bit more, but I know that John, I think before this meeting, sent along a document that's just a bill tracker of what I've been putting together for our legislative steering committee folks and anyone within their networks whom they choose to share that with. At this time, there have been about 1,764 bills, not about, I actually think that's the exact number of bills that have been introduced over the last 3 weeks. And so I've been going through those and trying to pull and track every single bill that has a tie to our policy principles, tied to the 7 vital conditions, and then really focusing on polling either bills that there's a lot of conversation around, are moving through the legislative process, or have a good chance at moving through the process to do a little bit more in-depth briefings with the steering committee on a biweekly basis through these reports, and then also a verbal meeting and report with those folks. A couple things that I'm not going to go through that whole list with everyone here today, but a few bills that I wanted to share. One is regarding food security. There is a bipartisan bill, and it's a governor request bill. There's a version in both the House and Senate. House Bill 1404, Senate Bill 5352, and this would be a bill to provide free school meals to all students in the public school system. I believe that there's already, I forgot what the data was, I had it on another document, but 30 or 40% of public school students, something along those lines in the state, already receive free school meals or free and reduced lunch, and this would just bridge that gap and I think result in higher test results and more confidence in school, and most importantly, food security. And so this bill is being heard today in the House and tomorrow in the Senate, and I do anticipate bipartisan support on this bill, and that it will continue to move through the process. Another area that is very important to the Legislative Steering Committee, excuse me, is digital equity. And there are 2 key digital equity bills that I want to share with the group here today. One is House Bill 1503, and this is titled Advancing Digital Equity and Opportunity. And it's a policy bill, and its intention is that it will help expand access to internet devices, digital skills, and more broadband infrastructure for underserved populations. Right now, a lot of the digital equity programming and broadband infrastructure programming has been tasked to the Washington State Broadband Office, a statewide broadband office that's housed under the Department of Commerce. In recent years, the Office of Equity was established as a separate state agency in the state of Washington, and so this bill requires a collaboration between the Department of Commerce Broadband Office and the Office of Equity to develop a comprehensive digital equity plan, establish a forum with representatives across a myriad of different sectors, and with the overarching goal to update the state's broadband goals and to bridge the digital divide. And the other one I wanted to point out is House Bill 1517, and this is addressing digital equity funding. There have been several programs that have been established over the last few years, mostly housed at the State Broadband Office, one being the Digital Equity Opportunity Grant Program. This helps fund nonprofits or public-private partnerships on internet access, digital skills training with the Digital Navigator Program, and others. And so the proposal here would be to impose a $2 tax on the sale of any new smartphone or tablet or other wireless device that has a value of over $250. And then that revenue would be deposited into the state treasury, then dispersed to these various accounts and available to these programs to nonprofits and others. And then also, so that would be about 30% of the revenue for that program that I mentioned. And then remaining revenues would go towards things like broadband infrastructure investments with a focus in rural areas of the state. And just to kind of wrap it up here, the last thing I want to mention, and something that we talked quite a bit about on our steering committee meeting this morning, is Senate Bill 5335, and this establishes a rural nursing program. So it creates a rural nursing education program to provide distance nursing education and training opportunities with the goal of improving quality nursing care for rural areas in the state. This is really targeted at addressing the not only the nursing shortage, but just the healthcare professional shortage that a lot of our rural communities are facing. There would be, for eligibility, nursing education training student must relay an intention to work in rural areas. It does also require the Department of Health in establishing this to collaborate with rural health partners, hospitals, and others, stakeholder consultations, academic institutions, workforce councils, and so on, to get their input and be able to come up with and develop regional programming and curriculum to meet the needs of every region. So that's a really interesting bill. It's something that we have a star next to track. It's pulled out of the other however many 100 bills we're tracking. And along those lines, the last thing I'll mention here is that is an extensive list. There's hundreds of bills, or there might be 100 right now that we're tracking for Thriving Together. That will definitely shorten after the first what's called cutoff. There are cutoffs where there's a certain day that bills that have not advanced beyond the committee process can no longer advance. They're considered dead for the year. They can be reintroduced next year since we're in the same fiscal biennium, but as far as this session is concerned, if a policy bill is not passed at policy committee by February 21st, then it's done and we'll stop tracking that one. And then the same goes for any bill that has a revenue source or a fiscal impact would be the following week as the fiscal committee cutoff. And so there might be 100 bills here now. It might dwindle down to 50 by the end of February. By the end of March, we could be looking at 25, 15 bills. A very small percentage actually make it through to the governor's desk. So this will become a far more palatable document in the future. So just bear with me, but I think everyone here, and I'll drop my email and number in the chat again, but as you look through that list, if there's any bill that you would like more context on, if you click on the link and you don't see that there's a bill report and there's just long policy bill document on legalese, it's really difficult to decipher, but you're interested in it, please let me know and I'd be happy to provide an analysis to each of you individually at your request. And I will stop there and see if anyone has any questions about the hill climb or anything I've talked about, and happy to answer those questions.
Blake, I might just add on a little bit specific to the approach we're taking this year, as we've really leaned into education and advocacy more so than any form of lobbying right now, based on discussions we've had with the legislative committee and community partners. So it's really, we're hoping this to be twofold over the year, is really, especially during the Hill Day, just educating some of our legislators on the work that we're doing around thriving together in the vital conditions, but also giving individuals an experience to be up on the Hill and educating individuals on what it is like to be part of the legislative process. So a number of people who will be joining us tomorrow are individuals that haven't had the opportunity as well in the past, and so it'll be a good experience for them as well. And we work with the legislative committee and Blake to identify key partners in the network that would be good individuals to bring with us on the Hill Day. Hopefully, in future years, we can continue to do something similar and expand it. Also, same on the education component, our hope is throughout this year for us to learn more about the process and how Thriving Together can interact throughout this process. And so we're going to continue to update board members. And we really see this as a learning year on how we want to either engage, work on education and advocacy, so we can position ourselves well for the next legislative session as well.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow and to Wednesday. You know, part of this is we'll have a lunch, but during the lunch, so a legislative assistant I know and myself will be talking to the group, just very crash course, you know, about how a bill becomes law in Washington State. It's very similar to Mr. Bill on Capitol Hill from Schoolhouse Rock, but it is a little bit different and nuanced when you go from state government to state government, and so that'll be a good refresher. We're meeting with all of the representatives from the third and senators from the 7th, 13th, and 12th legislative districts, with the exception of one who didn't have availability during the day, but will be joining us for a reception tomorrow night. And then there will be a tour of the state capitol just for folks to get their bearings and understand how government functions around here, and kind of ending it with a great meeting with Secretary Hobbs, our Secretary of State, just to talk about his role in managing elections at the state level, and also being the registrant of corporations and charities. And so I think it's just really well. Oh, and also meeting with the Healthcare Authority to talk about their role as a state agency and their relationships with accountable communities of health. So it's a well-rounded trip. Really looking forward to it. Looking forward to ironing out any wrinkles we identify over the next 2 days and having a really great product the next year and the following year, and welcoming more of you in years to come.
Yeah, I just want to, I'm excited about tomorrow as well. So thank you, Blake, for organizing that. Also, shout out to Teresa for all the logistics, getting that all together for us for the next couple days. So looking forward to it.
I echo that. All right. Well, I will put my contact info in the chat. And again, please don't be shy if there's a bill, even if you think it's incredibly wonky, but there's something in there that sparks your interest, just ask me and I'll get you an analysis. So thanks, everybody.
Blake, really quick before you jump off.
Yes.
Hey, I just want to say thank you so much, Blake, for taking what was a nebulous cloud of a bunch of ideas and thoughts and words several months ago and getting us to this point. I think there's a lot to be said in the way that it's been handled and the leadership that you took throughout that time. So thank you for handling all of us for all those months to get us to this point. Very encouraging to see all this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruben. I appreciate that, but I'll put the thanks back on to everyone in the steering committee. I think we learned together and put it all together as a team, and we're going to continue to build on that, and it'll become just a more perfect version of itself in the years to come. So I really appreciate the teamwork and everyone's leadership that was involved.
Yes, thank you, Blake. Thank you to our legislative committee. Your work is greatly appreciated.
Just noting that Ray Eichmeyer.
We've got Ray with us. Awesome. Hi, Ray.
Sorry, I was late.
It's all right. It's okay. All right, John.
Also Nikki too. I'm not sure if.
Yes,
Great.
Nikki's with us now.
Yeah, excellent.
All right, thank you all. So before I jump into my slides, just hold on, I need to make sure I find myself. Yeah, I would say a lot of just getting into the new year, and you kind of see throughout the theme, a lot of what we've been doing is really getting the structures in place to really kick off a lot of our programs and work this year. There's been a lot of conversations since the December board meeting and us really looking at how we're bringing together all of our work plans under the strategic plan that Kristen is working on. There has been a lot of differing contractual updates, and I'll go into all of that throughout my executive director report. But really, I'm just really proud of staff. We've really started to revamp and redo a number of things that we have been doing for processes and looking at how we set ourselves up for the future. So really thankful for all the work that's been put into that. And I would also just reiterate to Blake and Teresa, I think sometimes it's a lot of work when you organize an event in your own town. And when you're trying to organize an event in a town 3 hours away, the amount of work and coordination involved in that, really just want to give a shout out to those two to getting the hill climb day together. If you go to the next slide. The one thing I want to continue to do, and I will always bring up in my executive director report, is just to pull information from our latest newsletter on one of our vital conditions. One of our goals throughout this year is always, and throughout the years, is always going to be continuing to help bring those vital conditions to the forefront, helping engage in dialogue and conversations around them, and giving us an opportunity to look at how we do this work differently. So this last newsletter, we did a highlight on lifelong learning and really that focus around lifelong learning. And so really this is just the call out that higher education levels lead to, are linked to higher income, more opportunities, better health, and longer lifespans. And looking at how we can continue to promote education levels. And it doesn't necessarily mean someone has to always get a bachelor's or someone has to get a master's degree, but how are we encouraging people to obtain a high school diploma, GED, and continue to go on to some additional training or skills building or undergraduate school to continue to progress their career along, and linking that to really lifelong learning. An example that we highlighted in the newsletter this last month as well was Pinnacles Prep and the work that Pinnacles Prep has been doing to engage individuals in education and educational attainment. So I encourage you all to look at the newsletter. There's amazing ways that education is being offered and implemented across the region through both public, charter, and other school systems. And so each one has a unique way to connect with students and encourage them to grow. And so I would always encourage you to look at what Pinnacles Prep is doing, always stay up to speed with the work that our school systems are doing as well, and supporting that work. It's, again, really important to ensure that we are promoting and supporting our youth in lifelong learning and educational attainment. And a lot of that is driven by the adults that we've had the opportunity to go through this system. So we really want to be there supportive of the kids that do it as well. If you go to the next slide. Just a few state, or I should say national updates. I had a conversation with Linda on, I believe, Friday or sometime last week. I can't remember now. Just on some of the federal landscape. So there has been a lot of conversation on the federal landscape with a number of the executive orders coming out of the new administration. Specifically, one came out around pausing federal grants and programs. And so there was a number of questions on if the Medicaid waiver would be part of that pause. There was clarification that Medicaid was not going to be part of that. There was also clarification that the waiver is not a grant program, so it wouldn't fall under that. But the executive order was also rescinded. So we are safe and in the clear at this point for that. I think what it just highlights or calls to my attention is that we need to continue to be tracking that landscape, that there could be something that comes up that would look at waivers or other forms of federal funding. And we just need to be diligent for advocating that when that does come up and making sure that we are aware and we're able to course correct if any issues do come along. The other one that has come up in conversation was the executive order around diversity, equity, and inclusion work. What I would say is I've had conversations with community initiatives to see how our vital conditions work. Since it really weaves belonging and civic muscle into it, had any impact, and that what they have assured me is that that has been bipartisan support, and that work continues to have bipartisan support, so they're not concerned about that getting wrapped into the language around diversity, equity, and inclusion limitations. Also, a lot of the work that we are doing under our Vital Conditions Network is funded through funds we have from the original waiver, which are now unrestricted. So as a nonprofit organization, as an organization that's really leaning into diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, and civic muscle, we have a lot of influence on how we do this work, and we can continue to advocate and do this work moving forward. We may run into some of the issues around the executive order when it comes with current federal funding, but with the funds that we're currently utilizing, at this current juncture, there is nothing that says that we need to change course or do anything different at this point, and I wouldn't advocate doing anything different either. If anyone ever has questions, feel free to reach out to me. We are, like I said, continuing to track that and determine what, if anything, executive orders have any impact on us. Regarding the state budget landscape, the similar kind of situation, the Medicaid waiver is federal funding, so it's not impacted by the state budget and state budget deficits. So again, in that point, we are also safe in that regards. We are required to get approval from the state legislature and spending authority under the waiver. And so there will continue to be education with legislators, both on the healthcare authority part and across the coalition of ACHs, to ensure they understand how the funding works and ensuring that they understand the processes involved so that they do approve that spending authority. Otherwise, I would say really primarily on the state budget landscape, what we're going to want to be doing is paying attention to how the budget cuts are impacting our local partners and where we can provide support and education on that level. I have an assumption that a number of our partners that do operate in this region are also keeping an eye on that, and that there are risks to different funding streams coming down to rural community members and rural community organizations. And so we really do want to stay focused on where those impacts may come and where we can support or educate and advocate legislators to make sure that they aren't disproportionately impacting rural communities. That really gets to kind of that third bullet around the coalition and local advocacy. What I would say as a coalition of ACHs, we also have a policy agenda, and the coalition is spending a bulk of its time ensuring that the waiver gets approved as well as other statewide initiatives. So at this point, we're really leaving that work in the coalition's point, and Blake is really working on us in education around the vital conditions. And I think I pretty much gave you the update on the Medicaid waiver. What I would say on top of that is at the end of December, the Health Related Social Needs Service protocol was approved, which means for ACHs, the funding mechanisms that we engage in for this work around community-based care coordination and building a community care hub, all those funding mechanisms have been improved and in place, and we have received funding to date through January of 2025. That also means, and I'll probably reemphasize this again when Caroline gives her update on community-based care coordination, that the funding is moving forward, it is flowing into our accounts, and it highlights an urgency for us to continue to build out these community care hubs and this community-based care coordination strategy. And it's just an emphasis that we need to be, firing on all 4 cylinders moving forward. If you go to the next slide, some general organizational updates. And again, I've continued to forget that we haven't met since pre-Christmas. So just wanted to share, over the holidays, we as a team had an opportunity to do an annual Christmas party. And so we were able to go to, now I can't remember, is it NCW Woodshop? Am I getting that correct, Teresa?
Yes.
Yep, up in Kashmir, and we did a team activity building nested Christmas trees. So you can see we all had an opportunity to do a little bit of gluing, nailing, staining for some of us. I think there was some drilling in there as well. We all signed waivers for any of you board members who have any concerns around liability and staff around power tools. And just really had an opportunity to, again, just relax over the holidays and spend some time together. And then, I really appreciate the fact, again, shout out to Teresa, Mariah, Morgan, and anyone else who planned this. It was such a fun opportunity to do this together. And it was great to be able to walk home with some new Christmas decorations as well. Outside of that, we've been doing a lot of organizational updates as well. So Kristen, as she's come on board, she revamped all of our contracts and MOUs and our process around contracts and MOUs. And so we've really been taking the lessons we've learned over the last 5 years and looking at what we've learned with contracts with partners, and really went through a revision process and a revamp process to get a whole new contract template completed that we can use for partners. We've also, and you'll probably hear this in the care coordination update as well, with the new waiver work and the contracts associated with the healthcare authority, it also required us to really step up that contracting process. And so we've been working really diligently on those contracts. And as the board remembers, we approved those draft contracts in December. And we've been working with both legal, advance, and action health partners to really get those solidified and ready for signature. We also spent time as we are looking at growth and adjustments and changes in staff, looking at our employee handbook, and we went through a major revision of our employee handbook as well and shared some of those updates with the executive committee. We'll continue to do things like that as we have any major updates to our handbook. Predominantly, our board approved our handbook when it was initially created, and I want to continue to keep a portion of the board up to speed if there are any changes that go on. Every year, we are always going to have changes as it relates to applicable laws, and Carrie Nelson, our HR consultant, always does work with us to ensure that that is up to speed. And then last, I just wanted to highlight, we have been working on our strategic plan process that we shared with you guys in December. We've been able to work with all of the staff's work plans and strategic plans and looking at their measurement and pulling that together into one document. And we plan to present that at the April board meeting, and with the goal of presenting that quarterly. We're also looking at how we can summarize that so in a public facing way so that we can also share portions of that on our webpage. Kristen will have the joy of sharing all of that with you all at the April board meeting as well. If you go to the next slide. And I apologize, nope, it didn't cut off on me. The other thing I just want to give a shout out to is, as we've been doing all this planning and prepping, we've also been leaning into what it means to be providing capacity building supports as an organization. And so we really do have a number of capacity trainings coming up. One is a partnership with the Dispute Resolution Center on conflict resolution. We're continuing to offer motivational interviewing training. We are working again in partnership with the Community Foundation to do a grant writing road trip over the course of this next year. And we are going to be providing additional recovery coach training focused on recovery coaching in the emergency department. And this is really just a start of the trainings we're going to be offering throughout this year. You're going to see, and I'll continue to update everyone on these trainings. If you want any more information, I would encourage you to look at the newsletter. The newsletter has these all outlined, and throughout the year, you'll continue to see more outlined in our newsletter. Next slide. A few additional updates I just wanted to get everyone up to speed on. The Narcan vending machine in Moses Lake. I know I had shared with the board some information and some news articles that have come out around the conflict around the vending machine. I do want to call out, since that machine has been put in place, we have distributed just under 300 boxes of Narcan out of the Moses Lake site. So that just emphasizes the importance and the need for that vending machine in that area. Also, we continue to stay in contact with NCW libraries. We recognize them as a primary partner in this work, and they continue to have conversations with the city of Moses Lake over some of the concerns that had come up through the media, but we really stand firm in our support in their effort to continue to distribute Narcan out of that library, and we will continue to be in partnership with them moving forward. We also have a partnership with the Washington State Tracking Network on health disparity mapping dialogues. And so Sarah will be working to set up dialogues across North Central Washington to help engage individuals and community members in conversation around the health disparity mapping. I will call out, and I want to give Teresa Atkinson a shout out. She brought up in one of our executive committee meetings the need and recognition that DOH didn't approach the local health jurisdictions originally, and we shared that back with DOH to express that concern on them not approaching. And then we've been working in partnership, and Sarah's been working in partnership with staff at the local health jurisdictions to ensure that they're included in all of this work, especially since health disparities and environmental health disparities mapping is part of the local public health jurisdiction focus areas. Sarah, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to share on that piece to the board, knowing that that's coming up and you're still looking for places to host dialogues, I believe.
I am still looking for places. If you or your organization or your community would like to set something up, we're really only have through the end of February, maybe the first 2 weeks in March, if we're lucky, to get these dialogues done. But they are pretty simple and easy to set up. Really, we just need a facilitator, and we have a guidebook that gives you all the questions to ask. And so really just a space and an ability to invite your community come and have a chat. So if interested, give me a shout. Thanks.
And with that, I'll really open it up to questions, but really a lot of this month has been putting a lot of the bones and structure into the work that we're doing. So we don't have as many programmatic updates today because a lot of this has been a lot of the hard work and concrete pieces underneath our programs, ensuring that they're in place and set. And that is not as fun and or flashy to show on a PowerPoint slide than the updates, but you will see more of those in April. And Dylan, I see you got your hand raised.
This is not a question so much as praise. I had the opportunity last month to see Joey Hunter's presentation on the Recovery Network and the naloxone vending machines. Sarah, the way that you collect and organize data makes my heart sing. It is beautiful and perfect and so comprehensive. If anybody has not had the opportunity to be a part of this presentation and see this information, it's even better than I imagined. You guys did amazing.
I will take that as a request to share that presentation with the board, Sarah and Joey, even if Dylan got an opportunity to already see it. Other questions?
Thanks so much, Dylan, for sharing. It's awesome.
I will turn it back to Linda.
Okay. Wow. Look at us go. Are we ready for care coordination update?
Sure are. And I
All
really
right.
don't think it'll take us a whole 40 minutes either,
Okay.
unless there's a ton of questions.
All right.
So Sarah, if you can share the PowerPoint, and John's gonna kick it off for us, but I know that there have been requests from board members to just keep these high-level updates on the agenda, just so we're tracking this big body of work and how it's evolving. So that's what we're going to do today and give you some of the latest updates. So John, I'll let you take the next slide.
Perfect. And a number of these things might feel repetitive time in and time again, but knowing that the board only meets so frequently, really to ensure that you guys hear the same message over and over again and continue to get a concept of what's going under the 1115 waiver and our community-based care coordination efforts. We really want to continue to bring this, as Caroline said, to each board meeting throughout the course of the year. Also, I know the other thing I would say before I jump in is I know a few board members have requested additional one-on-one time to gain more information about the work that we are doing with community-based care coordination in the waiver. And we are happy to do that as well. If any one of you are feeling just disconnected and knowing that this is a large portion of the work and the funding that we are doing this year, we're happy to spend some additional concerted time getting you up to speed and answering any of your questions. What you see on this slide, though, is really a number of the work that is occurring under the 1115 waiver. And we always just want to call this out just to recognize that accountable communities of health is not the only part of the waiver that is going on. There is a large amount of work that is occurring through the Healthcare Authority and other partners to implement this work under the waiver. For us, the primary focus really drives down to that last bullet, where it's programs that address health-related social needs, or for us, our community-based care coordination or community care hub work. The other bullet I would emphasize that really takes along with that and really aligns because of North Central's work and leaning into the recovery community is reentry coverage for individuals leaving a jail, prison, or youth carceral facility. And so the work that Joey has been doing to build out recovery coaches really fold in well with the work of the waiver and the community care hubs. We have really strong partnerships with our local jails. At some point, we'll also be looking at how we continue to build partnerships with the broader Department of Correction facilities as well as youth detention centers. If you go to the next slide. So for the ACHs, these community care hubs have been funded through two primary mechanisms. One has been through the DOH Care Connect work, and one has been through the HCA waiver. So as you all may remember, back in August, we took on the DOH Care Connect contract. So this was a contract that was really focused on COVID Care Connect in the early days. Action Health Partners held that contract for a number of years and delivered services for individuals in isolation and quarantine who were diagnosed with COVID. As we transitioned out of COVID, they still maintained that contract, and they really broadened the definition of COVID to COVID impacted, so individuals that were impacted by COVID. And that really changed the dynamic because almost all of us have been impacted by COVID in some way, shape, or form. And so we've been working in partnership, and that work really built out community care hubs or care hubs across the state of Washington. Starting in August, all 9 accountable communities of health held that contract as part of this work. And for us, since Action Health Partners had been doing that work and has been doing that work well, we pretty much act as a pass-through through our region to partner with Action Health Partners for that Care Connect contract. We also see that work as a very good transition to move over to the Community Care Hub and the 1115 waiver work, which aligns well too, because we are actually expending at the end of this last year and potentially in January, we're expending out all of the DOH funds, and we're really shifting now from the DOH Care Connect work into the waiver NTP work and the waiver NTP funding starting this year. It also aligns well too with the fact that DOH, due to some of the budget funding and budget crisis, they weren't sure about and they still aren't fully sure about what the sustainability or long-term focus will be with their Care Connect work, knowing that the funding will be there post-June 2025. But they have also been working very much in conjunction with the Healthcare Authority to ensure that both the Care Connect and waiver work is working closely, and they're aligning measure sets and they're aligning processes together so that it's a smooth transition. The other thing, again, I would just call out, and I said this in my update as well, there's two funding sources that are really funding this waiver work for this community care hub law. One is the HRSN infrastructure fund. And so this is really designated to help build and support the infrastructure to deliver care coordination services and HRSN service funds. And this is really the funding that is to support care coordination services or the delivery of care coordination services. Both those protocols have been approved now, and the funding is flowing for both those protocols. What I emphasize, and as you see on the slide, funding for the service protocol was not approved until December of 2024, so the end of this last year. So up until then, we've been in a strong capacity and infrastructure building phase, and we continue to deliver services as part of Care Connect and recovery work. Moving forward, there's an even greater sense of urgency now that the service funding is flowing to demonstrate and continue to build up that care coordination piece and that service delivery piece over the course of this next year. And Caroline will get into more of the localized context of all of that. And if you go to the next slide.
I can take it from here, John.
And that is my transition.
So given that this is our first meeting of 2025, we thought we'd just provide a quick summary looking back on 2024 and what we accomplished. And like John said, a lot of it had to do with infrastructure building. And I know sometimes we're not like super sure, what do we mean by infrastructure, right? For the waiver and for community care hubs. So some great things happened. I think the level of coordination and cooperation that's happening between Action Health Partners, Advance, and Thriving Together is like very intensive. And we really leaned into joint planning and designing things together all of last year, and that's going to continue this year and beyond. Action Health Partners also built and launched the IT platform for the Community Connect program, which is the next iteration, like it used to be called Care Connect, and now we're calling it Community Connect because it's really not about COVID kind of post follow-up care anymore. And it's also broader than healthcare. There's a huge emphasis on social services, so really wrapping the community around people who need supports. We also collaborated on kind of vetting some of the trainings that have already been happening in our region, and also some of the trainings that the 9 ACH hubs had been discussing as like foundational trainings for the workforce. And we have selected the complex care certificate as a foundational training for anyone in the network that is going to be contracted to provide community-based care coordination services. We also launched a regional resource directory pilot, which is going to be a really important kind of building block for care coordinators so that they can easily identify what resources exist as they help clients. So that's some highlights and some successes. There are many more, but those would be the kind of like key ones I wanted to point out. Challenges, like John mentioned, the health-related social need protocols were slow to be approved, and it's really hard to proceed with work and to enter into contracts and to make commitments to vendors when you're not fully sure if you're going to get the funds. So that definitely kind of slowed some things down. There's also capacity constraints, right? Everyone is already so stretched thin, including our partners at Advance and Action Health Partners. So you can only move as fast as everyone can handle, right? Like you can't, without extra capacity, you have to move as fast as what people actually have. And then the IT development, boy, I know any of you on this call who've gone through EHR transitions, if you're in the healthcare sector, or even just any IT, if it's school related data and so on, Linda, it's painful. It always sounds like it's going to be easier. The vendors tell you it's going to be, yep, it can do this, it can do that. And then, you know, when you go into actual development mode, there are many surprises and challenges that just make the work a lot slower. So that was a look back at successes and challenges. I'm going to pause here just to see, are there any questions from the board?
The complex care certificate,
Mm-hmm.
is there maybe the ones that I know of are like between $400 and $500 per person to take that?
Yep.
Is that what you guys are looking at?
Yep, that's the one, Ray. And that's a module that can take upwards of 20 hours. There's 9 learning modules in that. So really, it's for a foundational training, I would say $500 is a really great and not too bad investment in a workforce to do this kind of work. And it's one that a few other ACHs have committed to as well. Some are making it required, some are making it optional. And it's also been vetted and supported by some of the entities that are also working with DOH around some of their community health worker training improvements. And so there's a lot of kind of overlay. And Ray, I don't know if you were able to pilot the training last year. I know some of our care coordinators were, and we've gotten really great feedback about it. Any other questions or? Let me see. Okay, let's see John's chat. So looking at what's ahead, thanks, Sarah. You know, I was joking earlier that making those Christmas trees felt so great because it was like we were in there for 2 hours and you had this thing that you had made, and this community-based care coordination work, as many of you, many board members who've been with us for a while know how long we've been working at this, quite honestly, since 2020 and before. So what's on the horizon in 2025, and this is largely going to be supported by the contracts that the board approved in December, right? The 2 contracts with Action Health Partners and Advance, they're both up to $2 million contracts. And it's going to involve a bunch more of that coordination and cooperation between our 3 entities. But you'll see on this slide, and some of the words are really tiny, so I'll speak to those, but both of these agencies are going to do some significant investments in IT infrastructure, contracting and financing, and then also network management. So for Advance, what that means is they're actually going to launch their platform this year for recovery coaching programs. So it's actually going to be a clone of what Action Health Partners developed that is then going to be fine-tuned and adjusted based on the unique work that they do with this population. And then Action Health Partners is going to continue making improvements to the Community Connect platform. And then they're also going to bring on their Health Home program onto this platform. So that's another huge lift on the horizon. In terms of contracting, so a lot of the funds in both of our contracts with Advance and Action Health Partners are actually to subcontract with the direct service providers. So you heard John say that now we're really going to need to build out our network and use those service dollars to reach even more people. So that means we need to bring new network partners into the fold. So that's going to be a large focus in 2025. And in terms of network management, both agencies are going to be working on growing the network, but also supporting the network with training and technical assistance. So this amazing workforce is well equipped to do work that is often hard, and it can be hard on the heart. So training isn't just the complex care certificate, but also some of the trainings like Joey led last year, like taking care of your heart, and making sure we're tending to burnout and well-being for the workforce. So that will be, you'll hear updates as we go throughout the year, and I'm hoping that Deb and Alia will be able to join and kind of co-present about how things are going. And yeah, any questions about what's ahead? And this was all reflected in the kind of the statements of work and the draft contracts that you saw in December too. Okay, so the last few things I wanted to make sure you were all aware of. We didn't get around to sharing this at the last meeting, but this is how we've chosen to describe the target population for our region. We considered input from boots on the ground, the community-based workers doing this work. We looked at data. We had to do a landscape assessment for our region and see where their needs are. And as you all know, the needs depend on where you are geographically. And then we also got input from our regional advisory committee. We have several members on the call today, and they endorsed this target population. What I'll point out for the board is that those 3 sub-bullets in many ways describe the 3 major programs that we're trying to really weave in our infrastructure. So the first one, I would say, is the one that's going to be most closely addressed by the Community Connect program. The second bullet, those experiencing substance use, including those involved with the justice system, that's really the recovery coaching programs that Advance is overseeing and administering. And then for those experiencing at least one serious physical or mental health condition, that's really a nod to the Health Home program. And Action Health Partner is one of the leads in our region for that program. So again, they're all different, they're all community-based care coordination, just for slightly different populations. And when we chose our target population, it was clear from input from everyone that we didn't want to choose one of these bullets at the expense of others, which is why we've kept it really broad. And I also kind of wanted to note the connection to our well-being language and the fact that we're talking about residents who are struggling and suffering. And so the great work that Sarah did last year around the community level measurement of well-being using the Cantrell's ladder, we've done some work to make sure that we include that measure at an individual level when we do assessments for clients. So we will know how many of the people referred to us were suffering, struggling, and thriving. And we will know if we have helped them move up the ladder as a result of their involvement with a care coordinator. So I just kind of wanted to link that to the vital conditions and well-being language that at a big picture, we've really leaned into as an agency. On the next slide, you're going to see a picture of like our current network, and you've seen some iterations of this before. I'll remind you that the colors have some symbolic significance. The light blue color are entities that are really leaning into this community care hub role. And as you all know, in our region, we've really wanted to invest in agencies that are already serving that role and using our dollars to help them do it better. So that's Action Health Partners in Advance. And then those light green circles represent the direct service providers who have contracts with Advance and Action Health Partners to provide community-based care coordination. And then we still have some contracts directly as Thriving Together, and we may continue to hold some of them, or we may shift some of them to our hub partners. I've drawn like a little arrows kind of going around AHP, Advance, and Thriving Together, just to symbolize that cooperation, right? I think I've mentioned before, sometimes we call ourselves the co-op, jokingly, our hub co-op. But this triad is just, like I said earlier, is really working tightly together. We meet together as a leadership team once a month. I do check-ins with both of their teams once a month, and then there's many other meetings in between to talk about really complicated stuff like information exchange between our various platforms, or contracting that is standardized but also unique to each of the agencies we work with. So it's fun, it's hard, and I just commend Deb and Alia and all their staff for sticking with it. This work requires a lot persistence and perseverance. So kudos to them. The last thing I wanted to show the board on the next slide is that because of our partnership, we did work on a joint logo for our North Central Community Care Hub. We wanted to honor the fact that in our region, this is a true partnership between Thriving Together, North Central Washington, AHP, and Advance. So we incorporated all three of those brands into our joint logo. And then this logo is also, it was developed in alignment with the branding that came out of the statewide ACH work. The hubs are going to be using that logo that you see, that the CCH with kind of an outline of the Washington state, and then that byline. So we're aligning with the state, but we're also kind of fine tuning the branding to show that this is not just about Thriving Together North Central Washington. It's really a shared effort. And we've worked on some flyers that we're going to start to distribute more in the month of February. They will have these logos, this joint logo on them. So I just kind of wanted to point that out also, so that when you see them, you're not surprised and you understand what they represent. I think I will leave it at that. John, did I miss anything that you would call out?
Yeah, I think the amount of collaboration can continue to be emphasized, because even on top of what's occurring between the three organizations, there's the collaboration across the 9 ACHs. And AHP, especially AHP staff, have been involved in those discussions as well. And so they're getting not just pulled into our local collaboration discussions, but also how are we doing this across the 9, across the state. So I think that's really important to recognize how much effort is getting put into ensuring that we're all staying in alignment. I think the only other thing I would also mention too is there are other health-related social needs services beyond just the care coordination piece that falls into more of those yellow layers. There's still more discussion and implementation work that needs to occur at the state level before those are quite ready for implementation. And those discussions are still occurring.
And a huge shout out to Morgan, who has helped me work with our folks at Lake Chelan Creative Marketing on these flyers. She just, I told her this is what we need, and she just ran with it and made it happen. And I can't imagine having to have tried to figure out flyers on my own. Morgan also did a great update to our website that I wanted to share in the chat. So we updated our care coordination page to reflect this partnership and the community care hub work. And it also includes a link to the referral form for folks. This is, I would say this is iteration 1 of some website updates you're going to see related to this work. Eventually, we'll probably create a standalone community care hub page that's like really targeting residents in our region who are just looking to figure out, how do I get help, or how can I refer someone? So just, we'll let you know when the next iteration comes out, but we encourage you to check out the language on that page. And thanks again to Morgan for helping with that. I think that's it, Linda, unless there are questions. I told you it wouldn't take 40 minutes.
And kudos to you too, Caroline, for coordinating all of this from our perspective, and all of the contracting that we're working towards, for this new year. And I know it's been a big lift.
Oh, Peter.
Caroline, can you take a question?
Of course.
So I love all this stuff, and I, appreciate the complexity involved. As you said, there's just a ton of collaboration required to get all this thing done. And I also realize it's a work in progress. But at some point, it would be really helpful to have stories or testimonials where you can sort of walk us back from the end client standpoint. Somebody who's at the a recipient of some of the services and the coordination of care that would not have happened had this network not been in place, and sort of make it kind of real and personal for us who sometimes have trouble with the conceptual nature of, you know, the whole thing, but just, you know, stories really help. And I realize this is in development, but maybe at a future date where, you know, the impact is more readily felt to bring some of that back.
And it will be, and that's part of, I think like for last year being primarily infrastructure building, there's not as many of those really tangible stories, but going forward, we'll have more. And I really hope that Advance and Action Health Partners can bring some of their staff to share some of those when we do further updates to the board.
Even is about how the infrastructure building was so helpful. Organizations who are doing this, that, you know, how important it was for them to get that in place. Could do that. I think that would be wonderful. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think also it might be valuable to hear from the community-based workers, because some of these investments in like IT, for example, they're designed to make their work easier. And you know, that's our theory, but like they're the ones who are going to actually test that out, and they'll be the judge. So we can also bring their voices in addition to client voices. So yep, definitely, Peter. Look forward to doing that too, because that is a motivating factor for me too.
Well, thanks.
Any other questions?
Linda, I might just jump in and share too, one of the conversations that's occurring at the state level right now, and I know there's a few MCO partners on the call too, is also working on how the community care hubs and the MCOs can better coordinate and align around referral processes and warm handoffs. And so that will be part of a focus over the course of this next year, is again, helping build that infrastructure and support there, and how we can bring both of those systems working collaboratively together. So, but that will also be in development. You'll hear more about that as we go throughout the year.
All right, great. Okay, Sarah. Oh, Kristen, you're the one with the financial update. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. It's a little confusing because it's something specific. It's not a broad
I was looking for
fiscal
Sarah, and then I went,
update.
oh
Yeah.
no, it's not Sarah, it's
Yeah.
Kristen.
And yep. All right. Yes, I get to go last. It shouldn't be too long. I did want to be able to share just a few updates on where we are with the fiscal sponsorship. So this is a new initiative this year, where we're offering fiscal sponsorship services. And you know, it's essentially where, if you're not familiar with this, it's you know, we're one nonprofit, essentially, that is, you know, well established and has the capacity, can play you know, a really important role to supporting another nonprofit group or group doing that type of nonprofit work, by providing financial management, compliance, and administrative support. So this is where we're trying this out, because there is a need. There's a gap we're trying to fill. And this year we're working with two different groups. And so there are a variety of models out there for fiscal sponsorships. It's kind of a you know, broad term that is just where one group supports another group in some capacity. And in these two situations, you know, it really depends on the degree of organizational support that is needed, and, you know, kind of the financial independence, you know, of the other organization, the receiving organization, or the client, if you will. But so the two that we are working with, first, we are the fiscal agent for the Coalition of Accountable Communities of Health. And so this is the 9 ACHs, and they together have formed this coalition. It's a 501c6, so they are established, but they do need some additional administrative and fiscal support that we will be providing. And then the second group is the Interfaith Justice Coalition. And they are passionate individuals that have come together to do good work, but don't necessarily have that nonprofit status, or that infrastructure to operate on their own yet. And so we're stepping in to help them get there. And so really in both roles, we're providing that financial and administrative support services that I mentioned to help the client or the receiving organization to function more efficiently. So next slide, please. Thanks. Yes, so the first one that I mentioned, we're a little bit further along with the coalition of ACHs. We have just signed the agreement with the coalition, and so that's between Thriving Together and the coalition board. Some of the key activities that we're doing, we're essentially facilitating a lot, and so it has been a lot of effort. And I'd actually like to give some kudos to John. He's really been driving this, getting the coalition to sign these agreements, review them, sign them, keeping things moving. And so what the next step is, we're starting to facilitate these other contract agreements. And so that's directly between the coalition and other contractors that support them. So those, consultants that provide facilitation support, even meeting locales, vendors, and just entering into kind of facilitating those agreements. Another big lift is that we're establishing the financial systems. And so we essentially, as the fiscal agent, will be managing the books. And so we're setting up, those initial processes, setting up a separate bank account, QuickBooks Online, Bill.com, kind of getting all of that set up so that the coalition has that, to operate. And we will provide that oversight and management, ensure although all of their consultants, get paid on time, and just it's more of a management role. So I think we've put a lot of work into it this past month, and I think we're ready to really start rolling. I think as soon as all of those pieces are in place, may not be quite as much work, but it will still be a really critical management piece. I think we can go on to the next slide. Yeah, thanks. The second one, we're not quite as far along, I think I mentioned, but we are discussing with the Interfaith Justice Coalition to enter into a fiscal agent relationship with them as well. So because they aren't yet their own nonprofit, will need a little bit more support in establishing their systems, kind of getting those organizational structures set up. So we're planning to do that. Still just a little bit in the discussion phase, but do hope to have some agreement together pretty soon. So I don't have quite as much to share on that. And then I just have one more slide. Really just, I think at the end of the day, what we're, hoping for it to be a win-win situation. The partners, clients, receiving, organizations, they will ideally all become more efficient and independent and be able to, do their work better because, we're just helping with the fiscal management aspect. And then ideally, we also will be better positioned, to offer these services and to be able to help other organizations in future years. Because there is a lot we're learning a lot as we are initiating this this work. And, there is a lot of work in the setup and getting things going. And so, for this year, we're planning to stick to these two partners and really, learn to do that right. So, so that's where we are for 2025. And then, hopefully we can maybe do more in future years. So that's what I wanted to share. John, did you have any more you wanted to add?
Yeah, I know this has come up in finance committees before, but this really kind of leans into an idea of really providing some capacity building support for organizations. The coalition was one that just kind of came up organically because of the need of that. A lot of this conversation really spurred with initial conversations we've had around the Interfaith Justice Coalition and the need to find capacity and that in local organizations. So I really appreciate bringing that to the forefront with, again, our hope is we can kind of help organizations get off the ground, get going, and transition into a path that they can be sustainable and provide some of these services themselves. So we may start as a sponsor, move to an agent, and then look at how they could build some of these processes themselves within their own organization.
Exactly. Carlene?
Yeah, so will there be any admin fee applied or agreed on in that?
There, yeah.
Go
Did
ahead,
you want to?
Kristen.
Yeah, there will be, so for the coalition where we have an agreement signed, there will be a fee to cover the administrative time. It's not to make money on it, but it's just to help, become cost neutral. Mostly though, like setting up their own QuickBooks is to manage all of the funds that the coalition members are contributing to operating. And so each of the ACHs, pays a fee to be a part of that coalition. So we'll be managing that and then essentially paying it all out again to, the various contractors and consultants. But we will have a small fee too to cover our costs. Yeah.
Is it a percentage, Kristen?
Um,
Carlene, we did for the coalition, we did a flat rate.
Okay.
This year, knowing that we're going to be tracking our costs, and so there's a few unknowns, we had a good estimate on where we thought that would land, and we'll relook at that next year. And I would say too, the coalition was much more established, and they have the funds available to be able to do the admin rate. I think some of the conversations as we get into some of these smaller nonprofits that need sponsorship, and that is really, how do we look at this more as a service for a while we try to get the feet off the ground to a rate, to something that's more sustainable. And I think those are, especially for the local ones where we want to, where it's tried true, we want to support that capacity. We're starting to look at that as maybe not necessarily a direct rate right off the bat.
Great.
Any other questions?
Excuse me. I think it's great that Thriving Together is coming together to create this incubator space for these nonprofits or these soon to be nonprofits, because that's kind of the trajectory that they need to be headed in. Or kind of, is there for the first one, is that going to change? Is Thriving Together always going to be the fiscal sponsor? Is that a long-term commitment, or just
Yeah, so right now this first agreement is for a year to see how that goes. So yeah, I don't actually have an answer for long term.
I think it's to be determined. To be honest, it kind of depends, and I think this is where we'll learn too. Is I think there's some points where some nonprofits may never really want to grow and build that infrastructure themselves, and what does that look like? Because there is a cost in building that into an organization. I would say on a coalition piece, we've talked about having that all standalone as a whole too. So there's the opportunity that might shift in the end. So we have a year contract because there's a few unknowns in that. And I think that would be the same as we grow with and engage in conversations with the Interfaith Justice Coalition and other organizations. That's generally the trajectory or idea, but I think we're going to want to be nimble and learn from that too.
Yeah, thank you. No, I love the idea, and I like the idea of being nimble about how it goes forward too. So not getting into a commitment of anything longer than we can handle. But yeah, I really like the idea, and love to see how this goes. Thanks, John. Thanks.
Mhm.
And Kristen has been putting a lot of work into this, so she's not patting herself on the back enough. So I just want to give her a shout out as well. And when we were talking, we really wanted to emphasize we're putting focus on these two first because of some of the initial lift that took. That we don't want to take on any other organizations until we feel like we understand where some capacity needs are, and that we can represent the organizations we're in conversation with well now. So we may come back in the future and say we're ready to expand this work, but we want to make sure that this really gets set in place before we make those kind of statements. Or if people start approaching us and asking, we just want to be clear at this point, we're committed to figuring it out with the organizations we're with.
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's very innovative and thoughtful. So yeah, thank you, John, and thank you, Kristen. Very cool. Thank you.
I think we'll also, learn a lot from, like with the Interfaith Justice, Coalition in the processes that it takes to establish a nonprofit, a 501, C3, and then it might be more clear to others in that space that want to, create their own organization, and we'll have a better handle on, what kind of supports and actual costs go into providing that service, to help others in the future. Yeah.
Any other questions? Any other updates? Top of mind, good of the orders. Affirmations.
Hey, John, I really liked the newsletter you sent out. Maybe because there were so many things on there, like sign up for like motivational interviewing. I mean, and their grants, and like there was a lot going on. I just appreciated. I'm like, oh yes, this is great. So
Well, you gotta give the props to Morgan on that one. She's she's the one who works diligently to get that out and ensures that we're getting the right information in there. But
thank
thank you, Brian.
thank you, Morgan.
Yes.
I might also add the whole team has really worked hard to get all of these events scheduled out. Part of the work planning that we've all been doing together. Obviously we want to make sure we're hitting all of the strategic priorities, but it also comes down to the details and getting the dates lined up and the calendars populated and things like that. So yeah, I want to thank the team for that.
I'm also excited about the care coordination and using our community-based organizations to really do some work. I think the value of those relationships will be the safety net for our community. And so, just like our relationships here on this, I know if I call you guys, we will help each other out. And I think that's what we need to be as a society. And yeah, I'll stop there.
I agree. A lot of things have been happening. Thank you, John, for the updates. Thank you, team, Kristen, Caroline, and all the work that you're doing. I agree with Peter. Stories. When we have the opportunity to hear some stories, uh, we'd appreciate that. I also want to thank our board members who've stepped up today and provided affirmations, added context, asked questions, and the work that you guys are doing on on our subcommittees or smaller committees, we couldn't do it without a village effort, more than a village. All right. Any last words before we adjourn? Okay. All right. Go forth and do good work. John, did you have something?
Oh,
You unmuted.
Thank you all for the start of this year and everything. I will continue to bring updates. And if I see anyone on the hill, Blake told me I had to wear a suit, so that'll be the like 2 or 3 days of my life in a year that you actually see me in a suit.
Will you take pictures? Are you going to be testifying? Like, can we watch it on TVW?
No, not this year. Maybe at some point. Carlene has a look on her face when I make those comments.
All right. Okay. Take good care, everybody.
All right.
Thanks
See
so
y'all.
much.
Bye.
Have a good week.